All right, settle in. Tonight's story might make you squint into the darkness, because we're stepping into the strangely vivid, sometimes muddy, often pungent world of medieval life. Not the grand battles or the shiny suits of armor part. No, this is the version where people boil their own shoes for dinner and draw snails fighting knights in the margins of serious religious texts. Now, right before you slip into sleep mode, hit like and subscribe, but only if this kind of weird history is your thing. And while you're at it, drop a comment with your location and the time you're tuning in. I love seeing where and when you're drifting off. This is your boring history for sleep, the kind that's so oddly specific it loops around from dull to fascinating and back to soothing. And just so you know, we're barely 5 sentences in, and you've already stumbled across one of the most debated questions in medieval art history. Why, in the name of all things pious, are there so many knights fighting snails? You squint at a medieval manuscript, candlelight flickering across your tired eyes, and there it is again. A noble knight, shield raised, sword drawn, bravely preparing to duel. A snail. Sometimes the snail is huge. Sometimes the knight is terrified. Sometimes the snail seems to win. It's not just one book. These bizarre little battles show up in dozens of manuscripts across different countries, time periods, and artistic styles. Scholars have argued about it for centuries, offering theories that range from deep theological metaphors to inside jokes among bored monks. You, however, just kind of stare at it and think, that snail's got a mean look in its eye. Now, while you're quietly chewing on that image, let's talk about leather soup. You're poor. Not the I have to cancel my Netflix kind of poor, but the my dinner is literally my left boot kind. Boiled shoes were a real thing, especially during sieges. When castles were under attack and food ran out, people got desperate. And leather, though tough, softens when you boil it. Strip the sole off your shoe, drop it in a pot, maybe toss in a few shavings from your belt if you're feeling fancy. Add water, stir, weep silently, and voila, boot broth. This wasn't just folklore. Accounts from sieges like Jerusalem in the First Crusade or the siege of Sancerre in France describe people eating belts, saddles, even parchment scrolls. The idea of boiling your shoes until they resemble something vaguely edible was grimly common. Flavor, texture, utter despair, yes to all three. And here's the thing, the concept of what made something food back then was just fundamentally different. Today, we Instagram avocado toast. In the 13th century, someone might scribble a grateful prayer after gnawing on their own shoe strap. It's all about context. Now shift your gaze back to that manuscript. The candle's lower now. You're still puzzled by the snail, and you're not alone. Some think it's a stand-in for cowardice. Others say it's an allegory for resurrection. One particularly strange but oddly satisfying theory suggests the snail represented the Lombards, bankers despised in many regions because their helmets apparently looked snail-like. You know, medieval subtlety. Another idea, snails are slow but armored. They move forward slowly, but nothing stops them. Maybe the knight isn't mocking the snail. Maybe he's honoring it. You're not sure. You're too sleepy to be sure. You just know it's weirdly kind of brave. Now let's sprinkle in something fringe. Have you ever heard of the Feast of Fools? It's connected to this weird energy. During this annual medieval celebration, people would dress up as animals, reverse roles, elect fake bishops, and mock religious ceremonies with gleeful chaos. And yes, someone probably dressed as a snail, or maybe the snail. So you see, medieval people weren't always as straight-laced as we imagine. They were chaotic, cheeky, practical, and often hungry. Even boredom wasn't safe. A monk copying scripture for hours might doodle a bunny jousting a dog in the margins. A noble might commission a prayer book that includes, for no clear reason, a man playing bagpipes with his rear end. You can't make this stuff up, and yet someone did. This is boring history for sleep, yes, but only in the sense that your brain slowly sinks into it like warm broth, or maybe like a slowly boiling boot. And here's a scholarly mystery to nod off with. What happened to all the peasants' voices? For every lord's chronicle and monk's manuscript, there are 100,000 stories lost. Did a starving woman laugh as she boiled her sandal? Did a child cry over his father's missing boot? Did someone somewhere write about the snail in their dreams? No one knows. That's the strange ache of boring history. You fill in the gaps with your imagination as the manuscript pages curl at the corners and the knight's sword glints faintly in the candlelight, still trembling before the most terrifying snail in Christendom. Sleepy yet? Royal flatulence and courtroom animals. You're lying on a floor covered in rushes that haven't been changed in weeks. The smell is equal parts stale beer, damp fur, and something vegetal. Somewhere in the haze of medieval life, someone in the room lets out a thunderous fart, and instead of embarrassment there's applause and coin. Yes, applause and literal payment. Welcome back to the charming absurdity of boring history for sleep. You blink, half awake, as your mind adjusts to this new chapter of strange facts and forgotten logic. The room you're in now is larger, with a high timber ceiling and banners fluttering gently in the warm air. It's a royal court, and yet the most celebrated performer of the evening isn't juggling or singing or reciting poetry, he's breaking wind on command. Welcome to the story of Roland the Farter. Yes, that was his actual name. Roland was a flatulist, a professional farter, and he lived in 12th century England. According to historical records, he was so skilled at his, let's say, craft, that he performed a very specific routine every Christmas for King Henry II. One jump, one whistle, and one fart. In return, he was granted a manor house and 30 acres of land. Imagine securing prime real estate by perfecting your gastrointestinal timing. Try that in your next job interview. But here's the twist. Roland wasn't an anomaly. Flatulence was a legitimate form of comedic entertainment. Jesters, minstrels, and even some early actors used body humor the way we use memes today. It wasn't considered lowbrow. It was just funny, immediate, human, the kind of thing that cut across class, language, and literacy. A well-timed toot was the Netflix special of the medieval feast. Now pan away from the court jester and into a very different kind of courtroom. You're in a village square. The air smells like roasted onions and old straw. A crowd has gathered. In the center stands a pig. Not just any pig, though. This one is on trial. A real trial with a judge, witnesses, maybe even a jury. And no, you're not hallucinating from the moss cake you nibbled in Section 1. Animal trials were a thing. In medieval Europe, especially in France and parts of Italy, animals could be legally tried and punished for crimes. If a pig killed a child, the community might demand justice. The pig would be arrested, imprisoned, tried for murder, and often hanged if found guilty. Some animals even had lawyers appointed to defend them. You're probably thinking, surely this was symbolic. But no, these were deadly serious proceedings. The animals stood in court. People testified. Punishments were carried out. There's even a record of a pig being dressed in human clothes before execution. Why? Maybe to emphasize its transgression, maybe as a macabre form of closure for the grieving family, or maybe, just maybe, medieval people were really committed to their worldview, no matter how strange it looks to us now. And it wasn't just pigs. Goats, dogs, bulls, even insects were summoned to court. In one bizarre case, the people of Autumn in France sued a group of rats for destroying crops. Since rats are hard to summon, the judge sent a town crier to announce the trial. When the rats failed to appear, their lawyer, yes, again a real person, argued they couldn't attend because the roads were too dangerous. The judge accepted the excuse and adjourned the trial. Now let that settle in your sleepy brain. Somewhere in France, in the quiet hours of the Middle Ages, a man stood before a judge and sincerely explained that his rat clients feared for their safety. And it worked. This wasn't comedy. This was boring history. This was their actual justice system. The logic behind it was rooted in theology. Medieval people believed the entire world, humans, animals, stars and stones, was governed by divine order. If something violated that order, it had to be put right, even if that something was a chicken who laid an egg that looked a little too round. That, by the way, got a few hens burned at the stake for suspected witchcraft. Now pull back from that trial. The square is clearing. You hear snippets of song, maybe a faint whistle. You think you catch a faint, familiar scent. Could it be? Yes. Roland is nearby, whistling, jumping, preparing for his encore. And here's a little mystery to mull over as your thoughts drift sideways. Why did animal trials fade? Scholars don't quite agree. Was it the Enlightenment, the Reformation, or did people just get tired of dressing goats for court? One thing's for sure. No matter how bizarre these rituals were, they made perfect sense to the people living inside them. Just like reality TV makes sense to us, or social media beefs, or the fact that we willingly watch people eat ghost peppers on YouTube. Medieval people had pig trials. We have TikTok drama, tomato. So sleep easy knowing the world has always been just a little weird. You're not dreaming. This is real. This is boring history for sleep. And somewhere in some quiet corner of your imagination, a pig in a tiny robe bows deeply to the jury. Case dismissed. Sleepy castles and bed-sharing rules. You wake up in a bed that isn't yours, but you're not alarmed. In fact, you expected this. Someone else's elbow is resting firmly against your ribs. Their foot twitches in your direction. There's snoring close and rhythmic, but not from your bedmate. It's from across the room, where 6 other strangers are sprawled out on straw mattresses. Welcome to medieval hospitality. You're not in an inn exactly. Those were rare and mostly for the rich. You're in someone's home, a farmhouse or a merchant's loft. You needed a place to stay, so you knocked on a door, explained you were a Christian, always a helpful credential, and the homeowner let you in. No paperwork, no ID check. You just agreed to share what space they had, which tonight includes their bed. See, the medieval world didn't view sleeping next to strangers the way we do. Beds were expensive. Large ones were a sign of wealth. Most people owned one mattress, if that, and it was communal by nature. You slept with family, servants, guests, and sometimes with people you'd just met. There were even legal rules about it. For example, married couples often had to let high-ranking visitors sleep in their bed as a show of honor. There's a word for it: bed rights. Imagine offering your bed to a passing knight or a visiting friar, then squeezing in beside them without a hint of awkwardness, because awkwardness hadn't been invented yet. This is boring history for sleep. But don't worry, you'll drift off before the foot cramps set in. The castles themselves didn't help much. Contrary to the cozy depictions we love in fantasy films, medieval castles were drafty, dark, and full of noise. Dogs barked in the halls, servants bustled through corridors, and the sound of wind squeezing through the stone could be almost musical. Privacy? Not a thing. Curtains helped, but mostly with blocking light or wind, not people. Now imagine trying to fall asleep on a mattress stuffed with hay or moss. Soft? Not really, especially if bugs made their way in, which they often did. There was even a belief that beds should be beaten daily, not just for fluffing, but to chase out the insects and snakes. Yes, snakes. That's a terrible image to whisper into your pillow, but hey, this is history for sleep, not comfort. The communal nature of rest went deeper. Monasteries had rules about synchronized sleeping, known as the Great Silence. Monks would all lie down at the same time, often still in their robes, and no one was allowed to speak. If someone had a nightmare or started snoring loudly, they just had to endure it. No coughs, no sighs. Just a room full of quiet breathing and the occasional whispered prayer. And here's a bizarre twist to keep your brain slightly awake. Some people in the Middle Ages slept in 2 shifts. They'd go to bed after dusk, sleep for a few hours, wake up around midnight, then stay up for an hour or 2, praying, talking, even visiting neighbors. and then returned to bed until dawn. This segmented sleep was normal for centuries. You're not imagining things if you wake up at 2 a.m. and can't fall back asleep. You're just accidentally medieval. Let's get weirder. In certain English towns, there were public sleep spaces in taverns where people could nap upright, tied to a rope. For a penny, you got access to a long rope stretched across a bench. You'd lean forward, drape your arms over it, and doze like a slumped scarecrow. At sunrise, the tavern keeper would cut the rope to wake everyone up, hence the phrase, sleeping on the ropes. That might not be entirely verified, but the image alone is worth a slow blink and a raised eyebrow. And what about night clothes? You probably imagine long white gowns and caps, sometimes sure, but more often people just slept in their regular underclothes or even fully clothed, especially in colder months. Taking off all your layers was risky. It invited illness, according to humoral theory. Night air was suspicious. It was believed to be unhealthy, even toxic. A cold breeze could upset your bodily fluids. So people bundled up, and if they had to get up to use the chamber pot, they did it fast and with great caution. Now pause for a moment and picture it. A smoky hall, lit by the dim glow of a dying hearth. A dozen souls lie snoring in patchwork blankets. One coughs, another turns over. The room smells faintly of wood ash, onions and wool. You're there, somewhere in the corner, curled beneath a sheep's hide, listening to the comforting chaos of sleep before the modern world. Here's your mystery to drift off to. Why did segmented sleep disappear? No one knows for sure. Some say it was the invention of artificial light. Others blame industrial schedules, coffee, clocks. But maybe people just got tired of getting up at midnight to stare into the dark. Or maybe we've just forgotten how flexible rest used to be. Whatever the case, you're safe here in this strange, drowsy century where everyone shares everything, including dreams. And yes, that elbow in your ribs is still there. Toothworms, bloodletting and frog pants. You wake up with a dull ache in your molar, nothing dramatic, just a nagging throb, pulsing along with the sound of bells from a distant abbey tower. In today's world, you'd take a painkiller or call a dentist. In the medieval world, though, you're about to meet the enemy, a worm. Not just any worm, a toothworm. A tiny, evil creature believed to burrow into teeth and gnaw from the inside out. Logical? Not really. But weirdly, it makes intuitive sense. When your tooth hurts, it can feel like something is wiggling in there. So medieval physicians assumed there was literally a worm living in your gums. And how did they treat it? You'd think maybe clove oil or salt. But no. Sometimes they burned herbs and funneled the smoke directly into your mouth to drive the worm out. If that didn't work, it was time to let the barber surgeon have a go. Now, the barber surgeon is a term you should never hear in the same sentence as open wound. But here, in this sleepy slice of boring history, they're one and the same. The red and white barber pole we still see today, it comes from this era. Red for blood, white for bandages. You'd visit for a haircut and maybe leave with fewer teeth or a bit less blood. Because bloodletting was everywhere. According to medieval medical theory, your body contained 4 humours: blood, black bile, yellow bile and phlegm. Too much of one? You got sick. The solution? Drain some out. Have a fever? Take some blood. Sad? Take some more. Tired? You guessed it, less blood. You lie on a narrow bench as the barber ties a leather strip around your arm. He hums while selecting a lancet. Outside, someone's hawking pickled fish. Inside, you're about to lose a pint or two of vital essence. People did this prophylactically, like taking vitamins. Nobles had regular appointments to be bled, often during spring and autumn. Seasonal blood drainage. Nature's way of balance, apparently. Now, if you think this is peak weird, let's talk about frog pants. Somewhere in France, a boy with a swollen thigh is being treated by having a frog sewn into the inside of his trousers. The logic? Frogs were believed to draw out poison and disease through the skin. Some healers even applied live frogs directly to inflamed areas, then replaced them when they stopped absorbing illness. That's one way to get a good night's sleep, if you don't mind the ribbiting. To be fair, medieval medicine wasn't all frog-based. They also relied heavily on herbal remedies, many of which actually had some benefit. Sage for sore throats, honey for wounds, mint for digestion. But it was all wrapped in a cloud of astrology, superstition, and trial and error. If your back hurt, it might be your kidneys, or demons, or too much laughing on Tuesdays. And the instruments. Imagine cold iron hooks, rough linen bandages, and a lot of hope. Surgeons didn't have gloves or anesthetic, and antiseptics weren't really a thing. The good ones just worked fast. Speed was skill, pain was expected. But hey, here's a soft detail to rest your head on. People genuinely cared for each other. Healing was often communal. Neighbors would bring broth, sing songs, pray over your bed. Children fetched herbs, elders recited charms. You weren't alone, even if your treatment included being bled on a schedule while wearing amphibians. There's also a deeper truth here, something about how medieval people understood the body. It wasn't just meat and muscle. It was spiritual, moral. If you were sick, maybe you sinned. Maybe your blood was too hot. Maybe Mercury was in the wrong house. So you lay quietly, clutching a clove of garlic, wondering what your liver was thinking. Now let's get a bit more surreal. There's a recorded case of a woman whose headache was treated with a skull trepanation. That means they drilled a hole in her head to release pressure. Did she survive? Shockingly, maybe. Evidence shows some trepanned skulls show signs of healing. But you lie very still, feeling your own scalp, grateful for pillows and ibuprofen. Is your fringe historical mystery? Were toothworms real? Obviously not. But some modern researchers wonder if people were mistaking larval infections or the rotting filaments of decayed teeth for tiny worms. Could be. Or maybe they just wanted an explanation that didn't involve saying, "I chewed too much boiled shoe." Back in your straw-filled bed, you roll over gently. The room is dim. Someone snores softly. And beside your bed, a frog blinks once, silently judging your dental hygiene. This is your boring history for sleep. Try not to clench your jaw too hard. Plague Doctor vibes and scented chickens. You wake to the sound of coughing. It's not yours, but it's close, too close. The air feels heavy, clotted with dampness and the faintest whiff of spoiled meat. In the corner, a man stands in a long black coat, his face obscured by a mask shaped like a bird's beak. You blink, unsettled. But he's not here to hurt you. He's here to help. Sort of. This is the era of plague, Black Death, pestilence. The world doesn't understand germs yet, but it knows something is very, very wrong. And that bird-beaked man, he's the solution, or at least the best guess. This is a plague doctor. His mask is iconic now, the stuff of costume shops and unsettling TikToks. But in the Middle Ages, it was terrifyingly practical. The long beak wasn't for show. It was stuffed with herbs, spices and flowers, lavender cloves, mint, meant to purify the air. Because people believed disease traveled in miasma, or bad air. Breathe in something foul, and the sickness would settle inside you like smoke in a chimney. So plague doctors filled their masks with sweet smells and hoped they'd live long enough to collect their pay. Now here's the weirder bit. If you couldn't afford a plague doctor, or if your town didn't have one, you might have turned to chickens. Yes, chickens. Some doctors believed that tying a live chicken to an infected person's body would draw out the disease. Not any chicken, though. A speckled hen was the preferred model. The bird would be strapped to the armpit or groin, two popular bubonic real estate zones, and left there for hours. When the chicken started acting sick, they assumed it had absorbed the poison. Solution: replace the chicken. Repeat as needed. You can imagine the results. Flapping, clucking, sneezing, and probably a deep existential crisis for the bird. This was history for sleep at its most surreal. But the ideas weren't random. Medieval medicine, odd as it was, followed its own logic. If good smells warded off bad air, then strong scents could heal. People walked through plague-ridden streets, holding pomanders, small metal orbs filled with perfume. Wealthy women wore flower-filled pouches. Men burned rosemary or pine to cleanse rooms. Entire towns lit fires just to change the smell of the air. And if scent didn't work, color might. In some regions, people painted their walls blue to prevent infection. Others wore red robes, believing the color would confuse the disease or draw it away. Plague, in their minds, could be tricked, outsmarted, even negotiated with. Speaking of negotiation, do you know who didn't get much sympathy during plague years? Cats. Cats were seen as witchy, sneaky, connected to the devil. So during outbreaks, they were often killed, especially black ones. Ironically, this backfired spectacularly, since fewer cats meant more rats, which carried the fleas, which carried the plague. It's the kind of circular logic that makes you want to sigh through your beak mask. And then there's the clothing. Plague doctors didn't just wear masks. They wore full outfits, long coats soaked in wax or oil to keep out disease, gloves, boots, hats, and sometimes even goggles. Think of it as the medieval hazmat suit. The whole look was terrifying. Imagine being sick in bed, only to have a figure like that silently loom at your door, reeking of vinegar and death lilies. You wouldn't exactly feel hopeful. But here's a strange twist of humanity. Plague doctors were sometimes hired not by the state, but by the town itself to treat the poor. They were underpaid, undersupplied, and often ostracized. Many didn't even have medical training, but they showed up day after day, beak and all. That counts for something. Now drift further into this scented nightmare. You're walking past a house with a red X painted on the door. That means plague lives inside. It also means no one will enter. Food is left at the doorstep. Prayers whispered through cracks in the wall. In some cities, entire families were boarded inside to die together, the doors nailed shut. But not all was grim. Some towns rang bells daily to lift spirits. Children sang songs about plague, sometimes gleefully dark. Merchants painted smiling faces on their carts. And when the plague finally passed, because eventually it always did, people danced in the streets, kissed strangers, and wrote terrible poems about mortality and love. It was messy, it was hopeful, it was human. Here's your mystery tonight. Did the beak mask work? Scientifically, no. It didn't filter germs, and it didn't stop fleas. But psychologically, it gave the illusion of protection. It gave people something to do, to wear, to believe in. And sometimes belief is half the battle. So tonight, as you settle deeper into your pillow, imagine the soft rustle of waxed fabric, the faint scent of thyme and vinegar, and the distant cluck of a deeply confused chicken doing its best. This is boring history for sleep, where even pestilence comes with feathers. The church's secret calendar and owl dances. You open your eyes to candlelight flickering through stained glass. It's early morning or maybe late evening. Hard to tell, because today isn't really today, not in the way you're used to. According to the church, it might be the beginning of the year, or the middle, or maybe a feast day with a name you can't pronounce. Welcome to the beautifully confusing world of medieval calendars, where time is elastic, feasts last for weeks, and New Year's Day happens at least 4 different times depending on where you are. This is your final dose of boring history for sleep. And it's all about how no one in the Middle Ages could quite agree on what day it was. Let's start simple. In many parts of Europe, March 25th, not January 1st, was the New Year. Why? Because it marked the Feast of the Annunciation, when Mary supposedly received word that she'd give birth to Jesus. That was a big enough event to anchor an entire calendar. But wait, other regions started their year on Christmas. Others picked Easter. Some cities celebrated on September 1st. You'd think a single calendar would help with logistics. It didn't. Medieval scribes dated documents by phrases like the third Tuesday after Michaelmas or in the 10th year of our Lord the King. That's like telling someone your birthday is 2 full moons after the goose molting. Try scheduling a dentist appointment like that. And then there were the feasts, so many feasts. The church calendar was packed. Saints' days, fast days, feast days, vigil days, octave days. It was like living inside a never-ending religious festival, except with way less sleep and way more fish. People tracked time by saints more than numbers. You might not know it's Tuesday, but you definitely know it's the feast of Saint Scholastica. Some towns went further, creating custom festivals so bizarre they make plague chickens seem normal. One standout, the Feast of the Ass, yes, as in donkey. Celebrated in parts of France, this feast honored the donkey that carried Mary into Egypt. A young girl would ride a donkey into the church. Then, during Mass, the priest would bray like a donkey. The congregation would respond in kind. It was holy chaos. Then there was the Feast of Fools, a gleeful inversion of everything sacred. Clergy would dress in costumes, wear masks, parade through town, and sometimes elect a boy bishop to mock church hierarchy. And remember the owl costume from earlier? That likely made its appearance here. Someone, somewhere, probably danced down the nave in owl feathers while the congregation cheered. You'd lie there, half asleep, wondering what kind of world lets you wear owl wings in church and call it theology. But to them, this wasn't mockery. It was part of the rhythm of time. The sacred and the absurd weren't enemies. They were partners. Two sides of the same candlelit coin. Now let's not forget Lent, a serious season of fasting and repentance, with loopholes. People weren't allowed to eat meat, fine, but they got creative. Beavers, for instance, were considered fish. Why? Because they lived in water, logical, tasty, legal. The same logic applied to puffins, barnacle geese, and even otters in some places. The rules said no meat, but they didn't say how fishy a fish had to be. Meanwhile, monasteries followed their own calendars entirely. The divine office scheduled every hour, with prayers at midnight, 3 a.m., dawn, and beyond. It was a holy marathon. Sleep came in chunks. Meals came in silence. The ringing of bells replaced the ticking of clocks. Here's the final curiosity to settle your thoughts. The church had forbidden months for marriage and sex. Entire stretches of time, like Lent and Advent, were considered spiritually unsafe for intimacy. If you conceived a child during one of these forbidden months and something went wrong, you might be blamed for the timing. Superstition wasn't an extra layer to life. It was life. But in the midst of this careful choreography, people still found time to play. Children reenacted battles in churchyards. Townsfolk staged comedic plays. Musicians wrote songs poking fun at bishops. And somewhere, probably near Chartres or Rouen, someone dressed as an owl flapped across a cathedral square and fell asleep in the straw. And that's where you are now. Time doesn't matter. The calendar is soft, like your pillow. There's no Monday, no Friday, no alarm, just flickering light, wool blankets, and the distant sound of Gregorian chants echoing through stone. This is boring history for sleep. Absurd, sacred, slightly itchy, and endlessly strange. Wind down. And now, as the candles gutter and the owl dancers vanish into the quiet corners of your imagination, you let your breathing slow. The world around you grows soft. No more footstep echoes on cobbled stone, no more distant braying from the Feast of the Ass, just the hush that comes after laughter, after stories, after the last page is turned and the book is closed. You're no longer sharing a straw mattress in a smoky hall or clutching garlic for the toothworm. You're not staring down a snail with a sword, or drifting through feast days where time itself forgets to move in a straight line. All of that is behind you now, wrapped in a blanket of flickering memory and distant bells. Your body feels warm, like it's been wrapped in wool and gently rocked. Your thoughts no longer rush to understand. They meander, like monks on a twilight walk, letting go of questions and deadlines and to-do lists. There's comfort in knowing that people long ago felt just as confused, just as tired, just as wonderfully lost in the quiet moments. They too watched the firelight dance on stone walls. They too listened for the heartbeat of the night. So breathe in, slowly. Let your chest rise and fall. The stories are done for now. And as the last whisper of owl feathers fades and the scent of mint and moss dissolves into the dark, you feel it, a stillness, a deep, kind stillness. Sleep is here. You've earned it. You're safe. You're home. Ash in the basin, toast on the stove. Tonight's next story might make you squint into the darkness because we're waking up in a place most people only whisper about. A place of quiet forests, grey buildings, and one very bad morning. Chernobyl, April 1986. The day the world tilted and no one told you yet. Your eyelids flutter open, still heavy with sleep. The pale ceiling of your apartment is cracked in one corner, where the paint keeps peeling no matter how many times you scrape and redo it. You're not worried about that. What grabs you first is the smell. Something burned, faint but stubborn, not quite like the usual over-toasted rye that your clunky old stove likes to ruin. You sit up slowly. Your body creaks, not from age, just the usual early shift fatigue. You glance at the window. Strange, lights already spilling through the curtain, and it looks pink, not sunrise pink. Candy floss mixed with rust. You squint, rub your eyes, still there. Boring history for sleep, they call it. But this kind, the kind where your kitchen tap sputters out muddy water with a speck of ash in it. This kind of boring hit's different. The faucet rattles again. You try the basin next to it, but it's dry. The tea kettle's empty. You sigh. One job. All you wanted this morning was hot water for tea and bread that wasn't blackened at the edges. Instead, you're sniffing the air like a hound, trying to figure out if it's the neighbor's burning cabbage again or something else. The light bulb above your head flickers, not in the usual Soviet flicker way, but fast, like a heartbeat skipping. You walk over to the stove, twist the knob off, then back on. The flame pops and sizzles. Toast is halfway to charcoal, forgotten. You pull it out with your fingers, curse under your breath. Your fingertips tingle, not burn tingle, something else, like holding static. And now your teeth hurt. You pause, confused. Not a normal ache, a weird kind of pressure, like you've bitten tinfoil. Still groggy, you shuffle across the tiny apartment to the window. The courtyard is silent. Not everyone still sleeping, silent, but heavy. You hear a dog bark. Once. Then silence again. You turn on the radio. Static. You twist the dial. Nothing. No music, no morning news, not even the droning voice of the usual state-approved weather guy. Just that flat, indifferent hum. Something isn't right. And not in a dramatic Hollywood disaster sort of way. More like your socks feel damp when they shouldn't, and the air smells sweet but wrong, like melted plastic and ozone. History for sleep doesn't usually come with sensory warnings, but here we are. You throw on your coat. It's early spring, and the heating's been fickle as usual. As you bend to lace your boots, your fingers shake a little. You blame the burnt toast. Low blood sugar, that must be it. A knock at the door startles you. 3 short raps. Not your neighbor. He always pounds like he's breaking in. You hesitate. No one knocks at your door this early. You wait. Another knock. This time softer. When you open it, no one's there. Just the quiet hallway, and something else. A shoe, just one. A woman's heel, scuffed and lying sideways, like it was dropped mid-step. You pick it up. It's warm. Boring history for sleep usually stays in the books, but this morning it's leaking through the walls. You open your door wider and step out. Your footsteps echo. It shouldn't be this quiet. Downstairs, the building's main door is ajar. Outside, the strange pink haze seems brighter. More orange now, bleeding into gold, but the sun is nowhere. You rub your neck, stretch your arms. A slight buzz in your joints makes you pause. The sensation runs from shoulder to elbow, like holding a running engine. Maybe it's just nerves. You tell yourself that a power plant doesn't just explode, that kind of thing. That's Cold War fantasy. You're not in a movie. You're just in Pripyat, a worker, a citizen, a name on a clipboard that someone will eventually call. Still, something's wrong. And the worst part? You can't name it yet. Remember when I mentioned the burnt smell? It's stronger now, mixed with something metallic. Your eyes sting. You step back inside and look in the mirror. The whites of your eyes are red. A flush is spreading across your cheeks. You touch your face, and your skin feels like you've been in the sun too long. But there's no sun. You glance once more at the window. Somewhere far in the distance, a plume of smoke is rising. You don't know it yet, but Reactor 4 has already changed everything. You just haven't been told. A glowing sky and a missing cat. You step outside, and the air doesn't greet you like it usually does. No scent of pine or damp earth, just that sickly sweet smell again, like heated chemicals and wet coins. The sky above is even stranger now, glowing like someone smeared molten copper across a dirty canvas. It's too early for this much light. The sun hasn't cleared the tree line, yet it feels like mid-morning. You pull your coat tighter around you, not because of the cold, but because of the silence. Chernobyl doesn't usually feel this still. There's always something, a truck backfiring, a distant laugh, a neighbor coughing into the courtyard. But today, the usual background hum has vanished. You can almost hear your own blood in your ears. You glance at the empty stoop where your cat Mishka should be. She's a stubborn tabby with more attitude than affection. Every morning she waits for you to toss her a bit of crust before she follows you around like a furry supervisor. But today, nothing. Not even a tail twitch from beneath the bench where she likes to nap. You call her name once, then again louder, still nothing. It's not like her. Even when she pretends to ignore you, she always flicks an ear or offers a low, sarcastic meow in response. This time, the silence answers. You walk toward the edge of the courtyard, past the communal laundry line where a few sheets still flap. But there's no breeze. They're moving just slightly, like something's pushing them from beneath. That's when you notice the birds. Or rather the lack of them. Not one pigeon, not even a crow. The trees are eerily empty. Boring history for sleep, right? The kind that rocks you gently with lullabies about agriculture and bathhouse customs. Not the kind where the sky glows wrong and nature suddenly decides to disappear. You glance across the street. A bike lies in the middle of the road, not parked, dropped, its back wheels slowly turning, then stopping. There's no one around to claim it. You walk a little further, feet crunching on something brittle. You look down. Ash, it's not snowing, but fine grey flakes are falling from above. You hold out your hand, and a bit of it lands on your skin. It doesn't melt, it clings, and it's warm. You hear a door slam somewhere in the distance. Finally, a sound. You call out. No reply. You keep walking, your boots now coated in dust. You pass the corner shop. Its windows are cracked slightly open, which is odd. You peek inside. No one. Half-stocked shelves. A loaf of bread left out on the counter, already drying. Then comes the breeze, but it doesn't bring relief. It carries that smell again, stronger now. Your nose wrinkles. It smells like melting plastic, iodine, and the inside of an old radio. You cough, and the cough tastes metallic. You try to spit it out, but your tongue feels fuzzy, like you've licked a battery. There's a sudden bark, frantic and high-pitched. You turn just in time to see a dog sprinting full speed down the alley. Not towards something, away from it. You don't see what it's running from. That's the part that makes your stomach clench. You back away slowly. Maybe Mishka is inside, maybe you just missed her. That thought is oddly comforting. The apartment was weird, but at least it was familiar. Out here, the world feels like it's slowly forgetting how to be itself. On your way back, you pass the old playground. The metal slide, the merry-go-round, the swing set, all empty. But someone's coat is draped over the swing like they left in a hurry. A child's toy lies on the ground. You pick it up. It's a small wooden horse, charred slightly on one side. You pause. That's not right. A shadow passes overhead. You look up expecting a bird. It's not. It's a plume of black smoke stretching across the sky, thick as oil, and moving faster than wind should carry it. Your ears pop. The pressure drops so suddenly it makes your knees buckle. You lean against a lamppost and close your eyes. Boring history for sleep has never felt quite this surreal. You tell yourself this is temporary, a malfunction at the plant. A fire, maybe, but you can feel it, deep in your chest. This isn't just a bad morning. This is the kind of day people write books about, the kind that never fully ends. Back at your door, you notice something new. A note wedged between the frame, just a torn scrap of paper with a single word. Run. You stare at it for a long time. Your hands tremble as you fold it and slip it into your pocket. Inside, the apartment is still and stuffy. You lock the door behind you, then immediately feel foolish, as if a door could protect you from whatever's out there. Still no sign of Mishka. Her bowl is untouched. You sit on the edge of your bed, hands in your lap, listening, and then you hear it. A low, distant rumble. Not thunder, not a truck. A sound like the earth groaning in its sleep. The shift change that never came. You check the clock on the wall. The same battered timepiece you've had since you started at the plant. The hour hand is right where it should be, but the town isn't. Normally by now, there'd be the morning shuffle of workers headed toward Chernobyl nuclear power station. You'd see the familiar uniforms, hear the scratchy banter about overtime, smell cigarette smoke mingling with wet concrete. Instead, nothing. You put on your work coat, the one with your ID badge clipped loosely to the pocket. It still smells faintly of graphite and engine oil. A badge that opens doors, lets you blend into the hum of reactor life. Only now the badge feels absurd, like it belongs to a past that ended 20 minutes ago. You clip it on anyway. Outside, the streets are waking up, but not the way they should. No traffic, no kids on bikes, just a few people standing around looking up at the horizon like they're trying to understand what they're seeing. No one says anything. They just stare. You head toward the plant, or at least toward the tram line that would normally take you there. The platform's empty. The tracks shimmer slightly, like heat is rising off of them, but the air is cool. Your breath fogs, which doesn't make sense. You sit on the bench for a moment. That's when you notice the static again, not just in the air, but in your body. A hum under your skin. Your hair feels like it's lifting slightly, like the whole atmosphere is charged. A man walks by wearing a plant-issued coat like yours. You recognize him vaguely. Reactor 2, turbine crew. He doesn't look at you, just walks past slowly, eyes fixed ahead. His hands are red, not bleeding, just red and shaking. You call out, ask what happened. He doesn't answer, just keeps walking. You don't follow him. That's when the realization hits. The shift change hasn't happened. No one's arrived to relieve the night team. The day crew should be here, but they're not. No buses, no vans, no chatter. You check your watch, tap it, still ticking. You check the badge, still your name, still real, but the world slipping, quietly but surely. You feel sick, not nauseous exactly, just off-center. Your balance is weird. You try to stand and the ground tilts just a little. The light from the sky is changing again, shifting toward green. The term for that color is chartreuse, you remember randomly. A strange thing to recall while the world is slipping sideways, but your mind clings to tiny facts like they'll anchor you. Boring history for sleep, right? That's what this is supposed to be, comforting little details. But this time, history isn't content to sit still. It's vibrating, humming, growing teeth. You decide to try the plant radio. Maybe someone's manning the communications desk. You make your way toward the nearest outpost, one of the maintenance sheds with a direct line. The doors open. Inside, the phone is off the hook, dangling like someone dropped it mid-conversation. You pick it up. No dial tone, no static, just silence. There's a clipboard on the desk. The last entry reads, 0419, power fluctuation, temporary anomaly, rechecking voltage feed. Then, nothing. You flip through the pages. Every log ends at that same time. All of them. You reach for the shortwave unit, flip the switches. Nothing. You try the emergency band. Still silence. Then, as you're about to give up, something cracks through. Not safe, not for long. Then static. You freeze. Listen harder. The voice is gone. But it wasn't your imagination. Someone spoke. Someone knows. You leave the shed and find yourself back in the open air. It feels heavier now. Your lungs work harder. A faint ringing has started in your left ear, high-pitched and constant. Across the lot, a figure in white appears. Not a uniform, a hazmat suit. They're moving slowly, carefully, as if testing the ground with each step. You wave. They see you. They freeze. Then they motion, not "come here," but go back. They're shaking their head, pointing behind you. You turn. The horizon glows, not orange, blue, electric blue. A weird shimmer pulses outward, like the world is exhaling light. Your instincts scream. You turn back to the suited figure, but they're gone, just the faint imprint of their boots in the ash. You stumble backward, retracing your steps. The buzzing in your ears deepens into pressure. Your vision sharpens unnaturally. Colors feel too intense. You blink, and for a moment you swear the buildings are breathing. Expanding, contracting. You tell yourself it's stress, that you didn't eat breakfast, that you're dehydrated. But deep down, you know better. This isn't stress, it's exposure. You've been breathing it in since sunrise. You just didn't know the name of it yet. Back in town, a few people are standing by the fountain. One woman is crying. An older man is arguing with someone over a map. A child is holding a balloon that sags low to the ground, like gravity itself has changed its mind. You want to shout, to tell them all to run. But where? No one has said a word about evacuation, no sirens, no loudspeaker announcements, just silence and smoke. And in that silence you remember your badge again. It makes you one of them. A worker, a witness, maybe even a liability. You drop it into the nearest trash can and keep walking. Graphite on the pavement, and not from pencils. You're halfway down October Street when you see it. At first it just looks like dark debris scattered along the curb, like clumps of coal dropped from a passing truck. But as you get closer, you realize it's not coal. It's something much, much worse. Graphite. You know the texture, you know the smell. You know that you shouldn't be this close to it, not without thick gloves, not without a lead apron and a full respirator. But there it is, littered along the pavement like gravel after a rain. You stop walking. Chunks of graphite from the reactor core are not supposed to be out here. They are supposed to be inside layers of reinforced concrete, surrounded by systems designed specifically to make sure that, if they ever did get exposed, no human ever came near them. Yet here they are, sitting where the pigeons used to. You crouch instinctively, looking closer but not touching. One of the larger pieces is slightly charred, its edges rough and cracked like it had been thrown or blasted through something solid. Your mouth goes dry. You stand quickly and stagger back, wiping your hands on your coat even though you didn't touch anything. You can feel it, though. That buzzing again, like your skin knows something your brain is trying to deny. History for sleep, huh? The kind where you calmly drift off to facts about 15th century laundry or Roman tax records. Not where your body is possibly absorbing lethal radiation while your town pretends everything is fine. Across the street, two men in military uniforms are quietly speaking. One of them has a dosimeter hanging around his neck, and it's clicking. Loudly, way too loudly. You watch as the younger man glances at it, then curses under his breath. The older one just stares ahead, jaw locked, refusing to look down. They don't see you watching. You back into an alley, heart pounding. Your legs feel rubbery. You want to run, but where? Your thoughts scatter. They're hiding it. Of course they are. Not because they're evil, because they don't know what else to do. Because the system runs on silence and routine, and panic would collapse it. Because no one wants to be the first person to say, "The reactor exploded." Your skin itches, not from sweat, from the inside. You lean against the brick wall and slide down to the ground. You breathe slowly, in through your nose, out through your mouth. The air feels thick, like soup made from metal and heat. Across the alley, a mural of Lenin watches you. His painted eyes are faded now, but his expression is unchanging. Determined, detached. You want to laugh. It comes out as a cough, and there it is again. That taste, metal, like biting a fork. You think of Mishka. Where did she go? Animals know things before we do. Maybe she ran because she felt it, the invisible poison soaking the sky. A car drives past slowly, an old Volga with a single driver. He's wearing a respirator. You're not. He doesn't stop. You get up, hands pressed against your knees. You need answers. The plant, the radio tower, anywhere. You start walking toward the civic building. Maybe someone there knows more. As you pass a small school, you see that the playground is still empty. A few backpacks are strewn by the steps. One is open. A half-eaten sandwich has ants crawling over it. You wonder how long it's been sitting there. An hour? 2? No voices inside. You reach the building and climb the steps. The glass doors are open, swinging lazily. Inside, the lobby lights are flickering. A janitor's cart is knocked over. A broom lies snapped in two. There's a phone on the reception desk. You try it. Nothing. Then you hear it. From one of the side rooms. A soft tapping, like chalk against a blackboard. You follow it. Inside, you find a woman, mid-30s maybe, scribbling furiously on a notepad. Her fingers are stained with ink. Her lips are moving, but no sound comes out. The paper she's writing on is covered with numbers. Just numbers. Rows and rows of them. She doesn't look up. You back out of the room slowly. Whatever she's doing, you don't want to interrupt it. Or maybe you don't want it to notice you. You leave the building and head east, toward the reactor again. Not because it's safe, but because at least it's real. At least it might explain something. As you pass a grocery kiosk, a gust of wind scatters leaflets into the street. You grab one as it floats by. It's dated yesterday. Routine maintenance will be conducted at Reactor 4. No cause for concern. Of course. You crumple the paper and stuff it in your pocket. Another lie, or worse, a truth that no longer applies. You hear the distant crackle of a Geiger counter, not clicking now, screaming. You duck behind a parked truck and peek out. Another team in suits. This time, they're spraying something from a canister onto the sidewalk. Foam coats the graphite, then melts into steam. One of them pauses, removes their glove. Their hand is bright red. They don't seem surprised, just tired. You retreat, head spinning, chest tight, and then it hits you. No one is in charge. Everyone's reacting, improvising. There's no plan, no safety net, only damage control, only optics. You stop walking. In the distance, the edge of Reactor 4 is visible again. Something is glowing at the top. Not fire, not smoke. A kind of shimmer, like the air is bending. You remember a rumor, something the engineers used to joke about, that the reactor could glow if you looked at it just right. A halo of energy, a phantom. You think they were only half joking. You take a shaky breath. Boring history for sleep was never supposed to end like this, but history doesn't care what it was supposed to be. The evacuation that wasn't called. Yet you return home, but it doesn't feel like home anymore. The door creaks louder. The floor feels uneven. The apartment smells faintly of ash and metal, like someone had been welding inside and forgot to clean up. You close the door behind you and lock it, even though you're not sure what it protects you from now. The note is still in your pocket. Run, it said. No explanation, no signature, just one word, hastily scribbled, like someone had 5 seconds and a pencil and chose to warn you. Maybe it wasn't meant for you. Maybe they stuffed the note in the wrong door. But now it's yours. You glance at the window. The light is still wrong. A golden haze now, soft but somehow sinister. You can't hear birds. You can't hear wind. It's like someone pressed a thick layer of cotton over the town. Every sound is muffled. Every moment stretches. You pack a small bag. You don't know what you're packing for. There's no official word, no evacuation order, no sirens, just rumors. But the graphite, the men in suits, the static in your ears, your body knows what your brain is refusing to accept. You throw in some bread, a can of pickled mushrooms, Mishka's collar, just in case, a flashlight that flickers when you test it. You curse and toss in a box of extra batteries. They're mostly dead, better than nothing. At the bottom of a drawer, you find a tiny black and white photo of your parents. You haven't looked at it in years. You pocket it without thinking. Outside, someone yells. You freeze, then silence again. You step back to the window and peek through the curtain. A man is running, not jogging, sprinting, like the kind of running that only happens when something is chasing you, but there's nothing behind him. Just a vacant street and air that shimmers like heat but isn't warm. You shoulder the bag and step into the hallway. Mrs. Polina from the 2nd floor is standing there in her nightgown, arms crossed, eyes wide. They said to stay inside, she whispers. You ask her who said that. She shrugs. They, the ones with the truck. They knocked, told me to shut my windows and stay put. They didn't look well. One of them was bleeding from the nose. She's gripping her cat, a sleepy grey lump named Yuri. He's clawing her arm, but she won't let go. Her eyes don't blink. You nod slowly. Thank her. She doesn't answer. You step past and down the stairs. Each footstep echoes, louder than it should. The front door is ajar again. This time, you pull it wide and step into the street like someone stepping onto a stage. For a moment, you wonder if anyone's watching. If there's a camera somewhere, recording all of this for some future documentary. The day Chernobyl died. You'd be a blurry figure in the background, walking down a road no one dared to name yet. You head toward the bus stop. There's no schedule today, no buses, just a few people standing around, waiting anyway. One man has a suitcase. A little girl is holding a red balloon that looks like it's losing air too quickly. A loudspeaker crackles on. You whip your head around. But it's just the PA system from the market buzzing to life and then immediately cutting out. Someone's trying, no one's succeeding. You hear the ticking again. Not from your watch, from somewhere else. You follow the sound. It leads you to the back of a truck. A dosimeter, old and dented, sits on the edge of the tailgate. The needle's in the red, solid red. You take a step back, bump into someone. It's a young soldier, barely older than your nephew. He's pale, sweating through his uniform. He looks at you like he's about to say something important. Then he doesn't, just walks past you and disappears around the corner. Maybe he doesn't know what to say. Maybe he knows exactly what to say and isn't allowed to. You sit on a bench, wait. But nothing comes. No sirens, no buses, no orders, just time dragging itself forward like it's just as lost as everyone else. You take out the note again, run. But run where? There's no smoke trail to flee from, no flames in the sky, just invisible poison, silent as prayer. You remember a training session from 2 years ago. A man from Moscow came and gave a slideshow. In case of an incident, he said, remain calm. He said it 6 times in 30 minutes. The slideshow had one image of a cloud and a red X over it. You didn't pay attention back then. Now you wish you had. You hear footsteps. A woman in a lab coat approaches the growing crowd at the stop. She's out of breath. She's clutching a clipboard like it's a child. Her eyes scan the people, then settle on you. You, your reactor staff? You hesitate. Used to be. She grabs your wrist hard. You need to come with me. You ask her what's going on. She doesn't answer. She just mutters something under her breath and pulls you toward the truck. You dig in your heels. "No one told us to leave," you say. "No one's going to," she replies. "Not yet." And just like that, she's gone again. Off toward the administration building, clipboard flapping in her hand like a broken wing. You stare after her, then at the sky, then at the people around you, waiting for a bus that isn't coming, and you realize the evacuation isn't going to be called, because calling it would mean admitting it, and admitting it would mean losing control. You sit back down and breathe through your mouth. The air tastes like rust. Boring history for sleep, you think. But what if the world forgot to fall asleep that day? What if it stayed wide awake, eyes burning, watching itself break? The day ends with no nightfall. You lose track of time. The sun never really moves. It just hangs there, too bright, too still, like a spotlight in a theater with no actors left. Shadows lie wrong, longer than they should be, stretching across the pavement like the town is quietly unraveling. You glance up at the sky again, hoping maybe the light will fade, even a little. But it doesn't. It just hovers. You go back to your apartment, not because it's safe, but because it's yours. And right now, yours is about the only thing you can hold on to. Inside, it's stifling. The air feels like it's been sitting too long, like a room closed for months. You open the fridge out of habit. There's milk, probably spoiled. You drink water instead. It tastes like pennies. You leave your boots on, just in case. The bag stays by the door. You try the radio again, nothing. You flip through the channels anyway, hoping for something, a crackle, a jingle, a voice. Then, there it is. A short burst of static, then a voice, not a broadcast, but a hot mic. Someone breathing heavily, papers shuffling, then a whisper, "The core is open." Click, silence again. You sit on the couch. That one sentence echoes louder than any siren. The core is open. You don't know what that means, not exactly. But your bones do. Your breath does. That copper taste in your mouth, it sharpens. Across the room, Mishka's collar glints on the windowsill. Still no sign of her. You wonder if she made it out. If she's hiding under a car or already deep in the forest, instincts guiding her far better than anything you've got in your bag. You lean your head back. The ceiling has a crack you never noticed. Tiny, like a thread pulled too tight. There's a knock at the door. You jump. It's quiet. 3 taps, the same rhythm as this morning. You open it slowly. A boy stands there, maybe 10. Dirty face, mismatched shoes. He looks at you with glassy eyes like he's not really seeing you. "Do you have water?" he asks, voice hoarse. You nod and hand him the glass. He drinks it in one gulp. You ask where his parents are. He shrugs. They left. You want to ask more, but he's already turning to leave. You don't stop him. You close the door. This time you don't lock it. Back on the couch, you listen to the stillness. It's thicker now, a silence with edges. You try the light switch. It flickers, then dies. You sigh. The electric grid's giving up too. You light a candle. It helps. Barely. You wrap a blanket around your shoulders. Try not to think about your skin. It feels tight. Your fingernails look a little too pale. You stare at your hands, and then at the clock. It's evening now. It should be anyway. But the light outside hasn't changed. There's no sunset, no blue hour, just that golden shimmer that never fades. You pace the room, touch the walls, check the faucet again. Nothing new. You glance out the window. The city is still there. But something's off. The trees are too still. The buildings feel unfamiliar, like props. You look at your own reflection in the glass. It stares back too long. You pull the curtain closed, lay back on the couch, shoes on, bag packed, eyes open, just in case. You try to sleep. You don't. You wait for something, a knock, a voice, a bang. You wait for the night to fall. It never does. So now you're here, not in the middle of the panic, but on the edge of it, in the silence before headlines, before history gives this moment a name. Just one person sitting on a worn-out couch, wrapped in a blanket that doesn't feel warm enough, listening to the soft tick of a clock that keeps going even when everything else is unraveling. The light outside never quite dimmed. The sky, still golden, still strange, presses softly against the curtains. You haven't moved in a while. You don't need to. There's nowhere to be, no bus to catch, no orders to follow, just stillness. You breathe in, slow and quiet, the kind of breath that feels heavy but full, like your lungs have finally caught up with your mind. You remember small things now, the texture of Mishka's fur when she curled around your legs, the bitter taste of your first coffee from the plant break room, the way your boots always squeaked one step too early on the stairwell. These moments live here too, inside this day that never ended. And maybe that's all history ever really is. One long day that no one could explain in the moment, but everyone felt in their bones. Sleep finds you, not all at once, but like fog, soft, slow, creeping around the edges of your thoughts. The buzzing fades. The world softens. You don't know what tomorrow looks like. You don't know if the light will ever return to normal. But for now, your eyes grow heavy, your breath deepens, and the golden glow finally dims, if only behind your eyelids. You rest, and for a few quiet hours, the history waits. The silence of the streets. Tonight's third story might make you squint into the darkness because we're heading back to a time that felt like the end of the world. And maybe, in a way, it was. The year is 1351. You wake up on a straw mattress that wasn't yours yesterday. The first thing you notice is the light. It's too quiet. Morning sun leaks through the warped shutters like it's afraid to touch anything. And outside, nothing. No merchants yelling, no dogs barking, no clatter from carts or clang from the blacksmith's forge, just wind. And somewhere, a bird. Now, back to the silence. You sit up slowly, hay scratching at your arms, and realize your mouth tastes like old apples and dust. You slept in your clothes. You don't even remember coming here. A one-room cottage. No sign of anyone. Just that goat out the window, chewing something blue and flapping. Looks like a tunic. Might have been yours. You step outside. It's not just the cottage. The whole village is asleep. Doors ajar, chickens loose. A cart half unloaded with sacks of barley, split open like they were dropped mid-step. It feels like everyone simply walked away mid-task and forgot to return. And the smell. It's not bad exactly, just strange. Sweet and herbal, with something sour underneath. Like someone tried very hard to cover something up. You pass the baker's house. The shutters hang open, and the chimney is cold, but there's a faint scent of bread crust in the air, fresh and clinging, like it's holding on out of habit. You peek inside. Loaves still on the table. Not even sliced. You take one, of course. Your hands shake more than you expect. Hunger, maybe, or nerves. The crust is hard, but the center's soft. You chew slowly, as if the act of eating might summon someone, but no one comes, not even a dog. And here's your first odd detail, just to keep your sleepy brain curious. Someone, probably recently, left a full pail of clean water next to the well, with a ladle balanced neatly on top. You stare at it too long, because who draws water, then doesn't drink it? You take a sip anyway. It's cool and tastes faintly metallic but refreshing. You catch your reflection in the ripple, pale, disoriented. You look like someone who's been underground for a long time. Somewhere in the corner of your vision, a curtain flutters, just once, then stillness again. You begin walking not with purpose, but because stillness suddenly feels unbearable. As you pass the homes, wood and thatch, uneven and familiar, your ears tune to each creak and shift, wondering if any of it will speak. You notice strange details. An open Bible on a doorstep, a child's doll pinned to a tree with a knife, 2 pairs of boots left carefully side by side in the grass with no one in sight. Your mind tries to explain. Maybe they fled. Maybe they're hiding. Maybe you're the last one who slept too long. Or maybe, just maybe, you weren't meant to wake up. That thought drifts in and settles like ash. You reach the edge of the village, where the path splits toward the chapel and the fields. There's a cart blocking the road, overturned. No sign of horses, but the ground is scraped and scuffed like something was dragged away. You don't follow that. Not yet. Instead, you head toward the chapel, thinking maybe someone would still be there. Priests are stubborn. They stay when others leave, or so you hope. On your way, you pass the herb woman's hut. It's covered in garlic ropes, and the door is sealed shut with thick wax drippings over the latch. Someone wanted whatever's inside to stay inside. A crow perches on the roof, watching you. You don't meet its eyes. This is where the real boring history sneaks in, the kind that makes scholars tilt their heads. By this point in the Black Plague, many villages had already lost half their people. Some sealed up homes with the sick still inside. Some wrote prayers in ash on their doors. Others lit candles in windows that never got blown out. You pass one of those candles now, still flickering in a cracked glass jar. Maybe they used tallow from a sheep. Maybe it's been burning for days. Or maybe time is just strange here. And here's your scholarly debate. Historians still argue over how much the people in these small hamlets understood what was happening. Some believed it was divine punishment. Others blamed bad air, comets, even foreigners. But one village in Bohemia reportedly hung herbs over their livestock and danced backwards around their wells to confuse death. Did it work? You'll find out. As you near the chapel, the bell tower looms quiet. The heavy door creaks open when you touch it, revealing a hall lined with benches, a wooden altar, and scattered petals from a wedding that clearly never happened. In the front pew sits something slumped, or someone. You freeze. The figure doesn't move, and that's where we'll pause, for now. The baker's house still smells like bread. You stand at the threshold of the chapel, waiting for the figure to move, or breathe, or vanish. Anything to break the awful stillness. It doesn't. You step closer, cautious like a child sneaking through a thunderstorm. Your boots creak across the warped wooden planks. Sunlight filters in through stained glass, dappling the pews in red and blue like bruises. When you finally reach the figure, you see it's a man, middle-aged, dressed in dark priest's robes. His head is bowed like he's asleep in prayer, but the silence says otherwise. His knuckles are wrapped tight around a rosary, and his lips are dry and cracked. Then he twitches. You jump. His eyes open, glassy but aware. Slowly, painfully, he turns his head toward you. He looks like someone halfway between this world and the next. Judgment, he whispers, barely audible. It came on a boat of teeth. You freeze, unsure whether to run or ask what that means. Instead, he leans forward with a creak of old bones and slides something across the pew toward you. A scroll. It's tied with twine, damp at the edges. The priest doesn't explain. He just stares through you like he's looking at something behind your face. And then he says, if you follow it, you might see the girl. Before you can ask, his eyes roll back. He slumps again, still breathing but barely. You take the scroll, because of course you do. You leave the chapel with the weight of something ancient in your pocket. Back outside, the wind picks up. It carries the scent of smoke and thyme, and oddly a new smell, sourdough, fresh, alive, which makes no sense. You ate the baker's bread hours ago. There shouldn't be anything left cooking. You head back that way. As you round the corner, you see it again, the baker's home. The door is open now, it wasn't earlier, and there's movement inside. This should terrify you, but you're too tired to feel fear properly. You enter. Inside, the place is warm, genuinely warm, like a hearth recently fed. The coals glow under the bread oven. The table has been cleared. Someone has cleaned. And on the counter sits another loaf. Different than before. Not the same rough crust, but something braided. Sweet-smelling. Honey and rosemary, maybe. You touch it and it's warm. You don't eat it. Instead, you check the scroll. The twine is wet with something dark. Ink, you hope. You untie it. Inside is a map, not like a real one. More like a child's drawing. No compass, no scale. Just symbols, a tree, a river, a church, a skull with wings, and a red X between the tree and the river where the skull almost touches. You trace the line with your finger, then glance up and notice something drawn on the wall above the oven in charcoal. It wasn't there before. A word. Arot. Or maybe Arot. You can't be sure. No one's ever explained that word, by the way. It's popped up in fringe texts from plague-era villages, scratched onto beams, carved into stones, and once written in chicken blood under a barn roof. Scholars still debate whether it was a name, a warning, or a desperate prayer. You decide it's all three. Then, behind you, creaking floorboards. You spin around, but the room's empty. The warmth is gone. The loaf, mouldy now, covered in green fuzz like it aged a week in a blink. You bolt. Back on the road, the wind has shifted. You can smell something burning. Not wood. Herbs. Bitter. Medicinal. You follow it. Past the herb woman's hut again. The wax seal is broken now. The door slightly ajar. You consider checking inside, but something tells you not to. There's a smell of decay wrapped in lavender, and you're not quite ready for what that means. Instead, you keep walking. The map leads you past the mill, where the wheel is still turning even though the water is too low. Past the graveyard, where someone has tied mirrors to the tombstones. They flash in the sun, like blinking eyes. Eventually, you reach the edge of the village. A tree line, behind it hills and silence, and now the real weirdness starts. The path turns to ash beneath your feet, like something burned here a long time ago, but no trees are scorched, only the ground. You follow the trail. It leads to a river bend. The air smells like mint and iron, and from a distance you see something moving. Figures, robed, masked, plague doctors. Not the cartoonish kind you might imagine, but real ones. Heavy cloaks, leather gloves, long-beaked masks stuffed with herbs. They're gathered around a cauldron, steam rising in slow spirals. One of them sings. A nursery rhyme, soft and breathy. Ring-a-ring-a rosemary, keep the worms and gods at bay. You don't get closer. Instead, you hide behind a stump and watch. They pass ladles of the steaming liquid to one another. One of them dips a strip of cloth in it and wraps it around a skull. You wonder what you're seeing, a ritual, a medicine, or something older pretending to be medicine. Suddenly, one of them turns and looks directly at you. He tilts his head, then slowly raises a hand and points past you, back toward the village. You turn to look. There's someone standing on the road, a girl. Small, barefoot, wearing a red cloak too big for her. And then, just like that, the plague doctors vanish. No sound, no smoke, just gone. You blink and the cauldron is cold. You turn toward the girl again. She hasn't moved. She waits, and we'll follow her next. A priest, a rat, and a map. She stands perfectly still, like the kind of stillness that doesn't come naturally to children. You walk slowly toward her, crunching over brittle twigs and frost-kissed grass. Her cloak shifts slightly in the breeze, brushing the tops of her bare ankles. The fabric looks hand-stitched, red-dyed wool, the kind only older women know how to make anymore. Too fine for a peasant child, too small for a grown woman. She watches you with an expression that isn't quite blank, just quiet, studious, as if she's already decided you're not a threat, but hasn't ruled out the possibility you might be useful. When you're close enough to speak, you open your mouth. But nothing comes out, because now you see it, she has no shadow. The light hits her clearly from one side. The sun is behind you. Your own shadow stretches out ahead like a tired dog, but hers doesn't follow, doesn't even flicker. She speaks first. You saw the doctors? You nod. She nods back, as if that confirms something she suspected. They can't help you, she says, not anymore. Her voice is even, soft, almost formal, like someone repeating lines they've practiced too many times. You ask her name. She says, "I've had 3, but the last one was Ansel." She doesn't explain if that's a boy's name or a girl's, or why it was her last. You ask if she's from the village. She says, "I was buried near the church, but they didn't bury me right, so I stayed." Then she turns and starts walking. You don't argue, you follow. The path winds along the riverbank. The water is dark and slow, choked with floating petals and ash. Occasionally, you see bundles tied with string drifting downstream, clumps of herbs, bits of cloth, sometimes teeth, folk remedies maybe, or warnings. Ansel leads you through a break in the trees where the ground dips. You recognize the place from the map, the skull, only it's not a drawing, it's a real thing, a massive one, carved from stone, half buried in moss and dirt, not a human skull either, too long, too wide. The eye sockets are large enough to crouch inside. Something ancient, a relic, a monument? You ask, "What is this?" Ansel shrugs. They called it the Devourer. Then she sits on a stone near the mouth of the skull and pulls a rat from under her cloak. You jump slightly. She strokes it gently, like it's a pet. It doesn't seem sick. In fact, it looks clean. Its fur is glossy. Too glossy. "This one remembers things," she says. "From before." Before what, you want to ask? But you already know. She means before the plague, before the fever came and the masks, before the bells rang every morning for the dead. She places the rat on the stone, and it begins sniffing along the grooves of the carved skull, as if it knows where it's going. That's when you remember the scroll again. You take it out and hold it next to the skull. The drawing is rough, but now you see it. There's a hidden passage etched into the illustration, barely visible unless you tilt it toward the light. It leads under the skull. There's a crevice behind the left eye socket, almost hidden under ivy. Ansel watches you. They locked it after the priest screamed. You ask which priest. "The one with the red eyes," she says, "the one who saw the root." None of this makes sense, but you push the ivy aside and feel along the stone. Click. A small latch gives way. The rock shifts inward, and cool air spills out like a sigh. You duck inside. It smells like wet wool and earth. The passage is low, barely tall enough to crawl. You shuffle along with your hand against one wall and your other gripping the scroll. Eventually the space opens. A chamber, circular, lined with shelves of jars, sealed with wax. Inside each jar, strange contents, dried flowers, tiny bones, locks of hair. Some float in dark liquid, some rattle dry. On the far wall a symbol is carved, a rat curled into a circle biting its own tail. Beneath it a phrase, lutum mane, mud remains. You've heard that phrase before in a sleepy kind of way. A peasant superstition. The idea that souls don't rise, they sink. That if death comes too fast, the soul gets stuck in the dirt, trying to crawl back up through roots and worms. Suddenly a whisper, not from the chamber, from the scroll. You unroll it again. The map is changing, slowly, like ink soaking through. A new path forms. It curves away from the river toward the hills, toward something labeled only as the Hush. You feel a tug on your sleeve. Ansel. She says, "They're coming, we can't stay." You ask who. She doesn't answer. She just walks away, the rat tucked safely back under her cloak. You follow, because by now that's your only option. As you exit the skull, the air feels heavier, and you notice the sky has dimmed. Not from clouds, just less light. The village bell tolls once, but no one's ringing it. In the distance you hear footsteps. Not running, just steady. Too many to count. You head toward the hills, toward the Hush, and behind you the Devourer exhales. The girl with no shadow. You and Ansel sit together in the dirt, staring at the smudged word on the back of the scroll. Remember. That's all it says. Not what to remember. Not how. Just the command itself. As if the very act of recalling might change something fundamental. She doesn't look at you, but her voice is steady again. There's a place they buried the names. You ask, whose names? She says, all of them. Yours too, maybe. You wait for her to stand. She doesn't. She simply gets up and starts walking, and you rise to follow. The map, if you can still call it that, no longer shows paths. The lines have run together into dark blots, like ink spilled in panic. You keep it anyway. You've learned it doesn't matter where it leads. What matters is what it shows along the way. As you climb away from the river, the trees get sparser. The air feels thinner. You pass a row of standing stones arranged like vertebrae, each etched with a different shape. A spoon, a shoe, a weeping face, a tree with no leaves. You try not to read too much into them. There's a soft hum rising in your ears. Not a sound exactly, but the memory of one. Like when you wake up from a dream and still hear the last line of music from it, but can't place the tune. Ansel leads you to a flat plain, half swamp, half meadow. The ground squelches underfoot. Dragonflies hover in clusters, wings twitching like tuning forks. Everything smells faintly of iron and crushed fennel. And then, out of the haze, you see them. Dozens of small wooden markers, barely more than sticks, no names, just carved symbols. One has a fish, another a sun with too many rays. Some are blank altogether. Ansel stops at the center of them and turns to you. This is where they bury the forgotten. You look around. No graves, just these markers, as if memory alone was enough to hold someone in place. She kneels beside a stone with a cracked top. Beneath the moss, someone had scratched a pattern, concentric circles like ripples in water or the rings of a tree. She traces it with her finger. They buried me here once, she says, but not all the way. Not right. You don't speak. You're not even sure you're supposed to. She pulls something from beneath her cloak, a piece of cloth folded neatly. She hands it to you. Inside, a key. Small, iron, badly rusted. The kind used for something private. A drawer, a diary, a lockbox. Where does this go, you ask? Ansel shrugs. Wherever you locked it. She stands, and for a moment her expression changes. She looks tired, like someone who's been holding a breath for too many years. The lines around her eyes don't match her age. Then she says, "There's one last bell." You ask what happens when it rings. She says, "You'll know if you hear it." Suddenly, she points behind you. You turn and see yourself, just for a second, standing in the mist, 20 feet away. Same clothes, same face, same scroll even, but that version of you isn't looking back. He or you is staring at the ground, unmoving, like a wax figure left out in the sun. You blink, and it's gone. Ansel doesn't explain. She only says, "This place folds, sometimes it spills." And now for your fringe historical detail, the kind of thing most scholars dismiss, but the margins of ancient records stubbornly insist on mentioning. In the plague years, there were whispers of mirror sickness. People claimed to see their doubles wandering roads at dusk. Villagers would hang cloth over mirrors to keep the soul from stepping through. Others smashed glass altogether. One physician recorded in his journal that the sick often reported dreams of being followed by a version of themselves that never blinked. You ask Ansel if that was your double. She says, "No, just your delay." You don't ask what that means. Instead, you hold up the key again. What now? She looks toward the east, where the sky is softening into pale blue and bruised purple. "The city," she says, "where the silence ends." She walks toward a path made of stones too clean for a swamp. You follow. But something odd happens as you walk. The air gets noisier. Crickets, crows, footsteps faint and mismatched. A market bell ringing once, then again. You cross through a line of trees and find yourself at a gate. Stone walls, guard towers, a city, alive. At least it looks that way from here. But as Ansel stops in front of the gate, she turns to you and says, "They pretend nothing happened here." You ask, Pretend what? That the year is still 1350, that no one died, that no one returned. You look at the gate, it's open. No guards, no chains, just open. The kind of open that's daring you to come in. You step forward, but Ansel doesn't follow. You look back. She's gone. Just her red cloak folded neatly on a stone, with no footprints around it. You pick it up. It's warm, and you walk into the city, alone. When the river ran black with herbs, you don't look back, not because you're brave, but because the air behind you feels thick, like something is watching through fogged glass. The kind of watching that presses in, not with eyes, but with weight. Ansel doesn't speak as you climb the hill. Her bare feet leave no prints in the dirt, and when a bramble snags your sleeve, it somehow avoids touching her entirely. She moves like someone the forest recognizes. The map in your hand has gone stiff with cold. The ink still damp where the hush curls across its edge like a whispered dare. At the hilltop, you pause. Below, the land dips into a strange hollow, a wide basin with a ring of stones in its center. Inside that ring, people move slowly, dressed in scraps of linen and wreaths of yarrow. They chant softly, heads bowed, bodies swaying. It smells like vinegar and honey, sweet and sharp like a dying orchard. You ask Ansel, "What is this?" She says, "The ones who think they can remember." Before you can ask what that means, a bell chimes, not the chapel's. This one is smaller, higher pitched, like something tied around an animal's neck. The people below stop swaying. Then they look up, all of them, at once. Their faces are covered with cloth, some stained, some stitched with symbols. One of them has painted his eyes onto the fabric, slightly too wide apart. They raise their arms and begin humming, not music, more like an echo of something you forgot you knew. Ansel grabs your wrist. Her hand is cold. "We shouldn't be seen." You duck behind a fallen tree, trying to make sense of what you're seeing. The group forms a circle around a stone basin. One woman cuts her palm with a flint blade and lets the blood drip into the bowl. Another tosses in a bundle of sage and a silver coin. Then a child steps forward, hair matted, holding something, a dead rat wrapped in ribbon. He drops it in. The basin begins to smoke. Ansel whispers, "They're trying to buy their names back." You don't ask for clarification anymore. Instead, you turn your gaze to the river beyond the hollow. It's changed. What was once a slow, dark stream now runs inky black, flecked with bits of crushed herbs. The surface moves unnaturally, like oil on a skillet shimmering in slow pulses. Floating on the current are dozens of small wooden boats, each barely larger than a dinner plate. Atop each boat, a candle, a coin, a single human tooth. You realize the villagers must have made these, or people like them, not for ceremony, but for passage. Coins for Charon, teeth for memory, candles to be seen from the other side. Ansel says, "Sometimes they forget to send the soul with it, then the body wanders." You glance at her. Her face is unreadable. And now for our scholarly mystery, the kind of historical puzzle no one's quite solved. During the plague years, certain river towns reported sightings of black processions, groups of people dressed alike, walking silently along the water at night, carrying herbs and candles. Records from France, Bohemia, even parts of Italy mention them, always in the margins, often scratched out. No one agrees on what they were. Quarantine patrols, cults, mourning rites. The most common theory, mass hallucinations from fevered minds. But you're seeing one now. Below, the masked figures have started a slow march toward the river, each carrying a bowl, each humming that same wordless tune. The melody catches in your chest like smoke. You feel Ansel stiffen. "They'll leave through the hush," she says. "And if we follow, we might forget too." You ask what the hush is. She only says, "It's where the noise ends." It's the first time you've heard fear in her voice. You watch as the masked figures place their bowls into the river. The liquid doesn't absorb them, it just moves around them, cradling them like a cradle might rock a child. Each bowl begins to spin, then slowly drift downstream. That's when something changes. The wind dies instantly, not even the grass moves, the birds stop, no buzzing, no rustling, and you realize this is the hush. It's not a place, it's a moment. It creeps in like fog, covering the landscape in silence so thick your own heartbeat feels intrusive. The people below stop walking, their heads all turn west, toward the bend in the river. Then they bow, slowly, as one. You follow their gaze. There's a figure standing in the water, tall, barefoot, wrapped in rotted cloth, with a veil covering their face. They raise their arm, and though the hush is complete, you hear something, not with ears, with bones, a phrase, not in your language, but your body understands it. It means you were not invited. Then the sky flickers just once. The masked people vanish, not in smoke, not in panic. They simply stop being there. The river goes still, the wind returns, the moment breaks. Ansel sits down on the cold earth and begins drawing a circle in the dirt with her finger. She doesn't speak. You sit next to her. Because what else can you do? She finally whispers, "There's one more place. They won't go there, but we can." You ask why. She says, "Because we've already been." The scroll in your pocket feels heavier now. You take it out and see something scrawled on the back. A single word that wasn't there before. Remember. And we will. Next. The city that tried to forget. The city breathes. That's the first thing you notice. Not metaphorically, not poetically. It actually breathes. The air inside the walls is warmer, fuller. It expands and contracts ever so slightly, like lungs beneath old stone. You walk beneath the gate and feel it pass through you, like steam from a kettle, except it smells faintly of perfume and clay. At first glance, it seems normal. People bustle about. Vendors hawk wares from carts. A man sharpens knives on a whetstone. A child chases a dog down an alley, laughing. Laundry flaps from window lines in soft pastel colors. Everything looks so functioning. And yet, no one makes eye contact. Not a single person. They glance past you, around you, but never at you, as if they've been trained not to acknowledge strangers. Or perhaps they simply don't see you the way you think they should. You pause at a corner where a woman sells pears from a crate. They're bruised and overly sweet, giving off that heady, rotting smell that bees love. You watch her for a full minute. She never blinks. You move on. At the center of the city is a square. A clock tower looms above it. The hands don't move. The hour is always just before. Whatever happened here, it's still happening. And that's where your weird historical fact sneaks in like a whisper. In the wake of the plague, some cities reportedly froze their clocks permanently. Milan, Prague, Rouen. No consensus exists on why. Some say it was mourning, others superstition. The strangest theory, that certain hours should never be repeated, especially the ones where the bells rang for too many dead. You notice something carved at the base of the tower. A phrase, in Latin, non morimur, we do not die. A man approaches you, pale skin, lips too red. He smiles. You've come for the bell, haven't you? He says. His voice is smooth, practiced. You don't answer, but he takes that as confirmation. Follow me, he says, turning on his heel. You do, because of course you do. He leads you through narrow alleys and crooked corridors until you reach a garden walled in ivy. It's dead quiet here. No birds, no insects, just trimmed hedges and a stone bench beside a dry fountain. This is where it tolls, he says. At night. You ask, the bell from the tower? No, he replies, the other one. And then he leans in. The one under the city. You ask what happens when it rings. He says, people remember. You glance down at your hand. You're still holding the scroll. The key is tucked safely in your pocket, and somewhere, still folded neatly, is the red cloak Ansel left behind. The man steps aside and points toward a staircase hidden behind a hedge. It leads downward. The stone steps are worn thin in the middle. You descend. The air shifts as you go. Cooler, wetter, older. At the bottom is a chamber, circular, like the one beneath the devourer's skull. This one is filled with bells of all sizes, some bronze, some iron. One is made entirely of bone, strung together with hair. At the center, suspended over a shallow pool, is the bell. You know it immediately, not because of how it looks, though it's enormous, blackened with soot and etched with unfamiliar script, but because your teeth hurt when you see it. The hum in your ears returns, deeper now, rooted in marrow. This is the sound you weren't supposed to hear. And here's your scholarly mystery. In some plague-era ruins, bells have been found buried beneath structures, never recorded in maps, never used in ceremony. Some believe they were placed there to hold the dead in, while others claim they were fail-safes, meant to ring only if something returned. You look down at your reflection in the water. It blinks. You don't. You stagger back, and the scroll slips from your hand. The bell trembles, just slightly, and then it rings. Not loudly, not dramatically, just one dull, deep note, like a door shutting far away. And suddenly you remember. Not everything, just fragments. The baker's daughter with flour on her cheek, laughing in the morning sun. The herb woman teaching you how to make tea from nettles. The priest before his eyes turned red. The goat with the blue tunic in its teeth. The candle in the window that never went out. And Ansel. You remember her name, her real one, the first one. It wasn't Ansel, it was Mira. You remember burying her, too shallow, too fast. You remember promising to come back and not keeping it. You remember what you were before you woke up, and then the sound fades. The reflection is just your own again. The scroll is gone. The man in the red lips is gone. The chamber is empty. You climb the stairs, each step heavier than the last. Back in the city, no one looks up, but now they see you. Their heads turn slightly as you pass. Their eyes don't smile, their mouths don't move. You don't belong here anymore. Or maybe you never did. You exit the gate. Outside, the sky is pale. You hold the red cloak to your chest and walk. Where? It doesn't matter. You remember now. And that was the only thing they asked of you. The path beneath your feet softens as the land flattens. The air, once thick with the strange scent of herbs and memory, begins to feel clean, not new, but settled, like dust after a long breath. You move slower now. There are no more shadows following, no whispers at your back. The scroll is gone. The bell is quiet. The girl with no shadow has returned to wherever forgotten things go when they've been remembered. The world doesn't rush. It lets you move at your own pace. Trees sway gently above, their leaves making soft ticking sounds like a clock counting in reverse. The wind hums through them, not as a warning, but as a lullaby. You pass an old stone wall with moss grown so thick it looks like velvet. You trail your fingers across it, and it feels warm from the sun. Everything is slow now. There's a small stream trickling beside the road. It sounds like laughter, low and distant, maybe imagined. You sit for a moment. Not because you're tired, just because it feels right to stop here, in this place between places. The kind of spot where a story exhales. In the distance, a bell tolls. Not the black bell, not the one under the city, just an ordinary one. A real bell, a village bell. You close your eyes. The ground is soft. The cloak keeps the breeze off your shoulders, and the silence that follows is not the hush of forgetting, but the hush of rest. You don't need to remember anymore. You already have. Sleep now. You're home. The sky above Bethlehem. All right, settle in. Tonight's fourth story might make you squint into the darkness because we're slipping into a moment in time when the world was quiet, dusty, and utterly unaware it was about to change forever. You're waking up in the hills, just outside a little town called Bethlehem, somewhere around the year we now call zero, give or take a few years. The air smells like sheep, the sky is more stars than black, and the rocks under your blanket are unforgiving. This is your nightly dose of boring history for sleep, the kind that loops around from strange to comforting and back again until you drift off without noticing. Now, right before you slip into sleep mode, hit like and subscribe, but only if this kind of weird history is your thing. And if you're still awake enough, drop a comment with your local time and where in the world you're tuning in from. Let's see how far this sleepy little tale can travel. So here you are, half asleep on a hill, wrapped in a blanket that smells like lanolin and campfire smoke. A shepherd boy, probably, or a traveller too broke to afford an inn, which, honestly, is most people these days. Your feet are cold, your fingers are stained from olives, and overhead the night sky feels impossibly alive. You notice it first with a quiet kind of dread. The stars are strange, too bright in some places, too empty in others, almost like someone's rearranged them overnight. That one over there, pulsing like it's breathing. You swear it wasn't there last night. Some people in town are whispering that the gods are talking again. Others say it's just a trick of the smoke and wine. Either way, it keeps you awake a little longer. This is a world lit by fire and silence. No electric hum, no street lamps, no distant car engines in the background, just the soft jingle of bells tied to sheep, the occasional cough of a sleepy goat, and wind dragging sand across stone. It's quiet, but not peaceful. More like the kind of quiet that makes you think something big is coming. You're not the only one who feels it. There's a strange tension in the village lately, people murmuring about omens and taxes. A woman in the market swore she saw 3 men in strange robes measuring the stars with their hands. Another claimed the moon blinked at her. The boring history for sleep kind of town gossip, really, except this time something about it feels different. You make your way down the slope, rubbing your eyes with the sleeve of your rough wool tunic. The stones shift under your sandals. Somewhere to your left, a lizard darts into a crack in the rock. The scent of pressed olives, burnt barley, and the faint metallic tang of distant copper fills your nose. Bethlehem isn't much to look at, just a knot of squat homes with flat roofs clustered like sleepy bees around a dusty road. There are donkeys tied outside, snoring louder than any man should, and the occasional glint of a Roman helmet reflecting moonlight behind a corner. Rome is always watching, even here, at the edges of the empire. As you pass through the narrow streets, you hear it again, that low chant, foreign, not local, maybe Aramaic, maybe something older, someone singing a lullaby to a child, but the words feel ancient and strange. You can't help but linger outside the doorway, listening. The child doesn't cry. That's the first odd thing. Newborns always cry. This one is silent, as if even it knows not to disturb the night. A dog brushes past your leg, tail tucked low. You glance down. It's got one eye and a limp. Follows you for a while, then turns back the way you came. Smart dog. You sit on a worn stone ledge near a shuttered stall, rubbing warmth back into your hands. Across the road, an old man in rags is drawing something in the dirt with a stick. A map, maybe, or a story. You can't tell. He looks up at you, smiles, then goes back to drawing. You don't ask questions, not here. Above you, the stars are still shifting, slowly now, like gears inside a cosmic machine. You wonder if this is how prophecies start, with ordinary people noticing small, unsettling things and not quite knowing what to do with them. A cart rolls by, pulled by a mule that looks as tired as you feel. 2 cloaked figures walk behind it, whispering too softly to catch. The cart is loaded with straw and swaddling cloth. Nothing worth stealing, unless, of course, you knew who it was for. You rest your head back against the cool wall. Somewhere behind you, the sound of a lullaby fades into the night. Something tells you sleep will come, but not easily. This is boring history for sleep, but not the kind they taught you in school. This is the kind with restless skies, quiet omens, and the strange hush of something ancient preparing to stir. And here you are, caught in the middle of it, barefoot and half asleep, wondering why the stars feel like they're watching you. Rome's obsession with taxes. You wake up to shouting. Not the panicked, run-for-your-life kind, but the bureaucratic kind. The kind that smells like hot dust, dried ink, and a very long line. You blink away sleep and find yourself slumped against the corner of a sandstone building, your blanket tangled around your legs like a snake that gave up halfway through a fight. It's early, but the square is already buzzing. A man in a faded tunic yells something about names, papers, and family lineage. Another waves a wax tablet like it's on fire. There are more people in this square than you thought even lived in this town, and all of them are glaring at each other like it's someone else's fault they didn't wake up at dawn to get in line. Welcome to the Roman census. You stretch, yawn, and join the chaos. There's no such thing as skipping it, not unless you enjoy Roman soldiers at your door or having your goats mysteriously reassigned to a more loyal province. You shuffle past a woman arguing that her uncle's cousin shouldn't count as a dependent, and a man loudly proclaiming he's definitely not trying to avoid the head tax by pretending to be his own twin. This is your sleepy little reminder that when Jesus was born, Rome was obsessed with paperwork. Every head counted, every coin tracked. You'd think the empire would crumble from war or invasion, but if you asked anyone in line right now, it's going to collapse under the weight of its own forms. You finally reach the front, greeted by a scribe who looks like he's eaten nothing but bitter herbs and disappointment for breakfast. He barely glances up. Name? He asks. You give it. Lineage? You pause. That's a trickier one. So you mumble something vaguely noble, hoping the wax tablet doesn't catch the tremor in your voice. He nods, scratches something down, and dismisses you with a wave. Just like that, you're another tiny speck in Rome's colossal filing cabinet. As you walk away, someone slips beside you, young, nervous, carrying a baby goat. Did you say you were from the tribe of Judah? He asks, wide-eyed. You nod cautiously. Me too, or I think so. Maybe it was Levi. He frowns. I just put possibly related to someone important. You both laugh, but it's the kind of laugh that hides a little fear. You stop by a fig vendor to trade a worn copper for something sweet. The vendor's hands are stained purple, his eyes sharp. They say the emperor wants a new map, he mutters as he weighs the fruit. One that tells him who belongs where, who owes what. He spits. A man born under Augustus doesn't get to be anonymous. You chew on that as you wander the edge of town, figs in hand. It's not just about taxes, it's about control, about knowing where every carpenter, goat herder, and olive presser is at all times. Rome's genius wasn't just its roads and armies. It was its ability to make everyone feel like they owed it something. Even here, in sleepy Bethlehem, you're tangled in its web. And it's not just men getting taxed. You pass by a group of women sitting under a tree, one breastfeeding, another weaving baskets, a third trying to calculate how much oil she needs to keep her lamp burning through the night. They count us too now, the weaver says as you pause. Even if we have no husbands, even if we have nothing to give. Her tone is flat, tired. A little girl runs by, arms out like wings, pretending to be a bird. She nearly trips over your feet and laughs. Her mother yells after her in Hebrew, then sighs. She doesn't understand yet that even her play will one day have a price. You walk on, back toward the hills, trying not to think too hard. The road is quieter now. Dust clings to your ankles. A passing merchant cart kicks up a cloud of it, and a broken sandal strap finally gives up the fight. You hop to a nearby rock and start tying it with a bit of reed. That's when you hear it again. The same chant from last night, but this time it's joined by soft drums and the pluck of a lyre. A procession moves slowly down the road, led by three robed figures with beards that look like they've survived multiple climates. They speak in a language that dances rather than marches. One of them holds a scroll etched in gold. They're not from here. The locals stare, but say nothing. Foreigners pass through all the time, but this trio feels different, focused, like they know exactly where they're going, even if the road doesn't. One of them glances your way for just a moment, and you feel it in your spine. Not fear, not reverence, just a strange kind of recognition. Then they're gone, swallowed up by the crowd near the census office. You shake your head, like brushing off a dream, and return to your spot beneath the olive tree. You pick at your figs, the sweetness a little dulled now. This world is big, complicated, and ruled by people you'll never meet. But tonight, right here, you can still hear laughter in the square. You can still smell bread in the wind. You can still watch the stars flicker in that oddly organized sky. This is boring history for sleep. The kind where even bureaucracy gets tangled in destiny. The kind where a dusty form and a fig stand can nudge the future just enough to matter. The noisy inns and quieter stables. You rub your eyes and step off the street, drawn by the sound of shouting that's just a little too jolly to be a fight. An inn, tucked between two uneven buildings, advertises itself with a crooked wooden sign, and the smell of something that might be bread, but probably isn't. You duck your head, step inside, and instantly regret it. It's chaos, glorious, sticky, sweaty chaos. The main room of the inn is packed wall to wall with travelers, merchants, locals, soldiers, and one goat that has apparently decided it lives here now. A man is singing something slurred while standing on a low table, his arms flapping like wings. Two children are chasing a dog around a cluster of legs. The innkeeper, a woman with arms like clay pots and a voice like a war trumpet, is yelling at everyone and no one in particular. You are definitely not getting a bed tonight. This is where the census dumps the overflow. Rome demands the counting, but leaves the hospitality to the already overworked. You edge through the room, dodging a spilled jug of wine and stepping over a passed-out man, clutching a pouch of coins like it's his firstborn. A bored-looking boy at the counter tells you the only thing left is straw in the back, and even that might be spoken for. You nod and offer a coin. He shrugs, takes it, then points to a creaky door that smells like livestock and old onions. It's technically a stable. And by technically, we mean it definitely has more animals than humans in it, but it's quieter here, and the straw is only mildly damp. A donkey blinks at you as you settle into a corner, and a chicken hops onto your lap without asking permission. You sigh and let it stay. This is the part of history no one paints murals of. The boring history, the tired feet, the aching back, the stable that became a cradle. Because this isn't a world of palaces and perfect robes. It's a world of makeshift beds and interrupted sleep. Someone coughs behind a stack of crates. You peek around and see a young woman wrapped in linen, her eyes closed, her breathing steady. A man sits beside her, face lined with the kind of worry that never really goes away. They don't look wealthy or particularly important, just tired, like everyone else. You settle back against the wall, the chicken still roosting on your lap, and try to rest. Through a crack in the roof, you can see the stars again. That one bright one is still there, impossibly fixed in the sky. You wonder if it ever moves, or if it's just waiting. The noise from the inn carries faintly through the wall. Laughter, clinking, the occasional crash. Someone yells, "I told you that was my cheese," followed by a short scuffle and then more laughter. The goat bleats, unimpressed. You close your eyes and breathe in the scent of hay, sweat, and something faintly sweet. Maybe it's honey cakes. Maybe it's someone's forgotten sandal. Hard to tell anymore. You think back to the last real sleep you had. Probably 2 nights ago, before the crowds and taxis and whispered rumors, before the stars got weird, before your dreams started to feel more like memories of something you haven't lived yet. A beetle crawls across your sleeve. You flick it off gently. Somewhere in the distance, a baby cries, not loud, just a little whimper, the kind that sounds more confused than upset. You hear hushed voices, a man asking for help, a woman's soft reply, then footsteps, people coming and going, murmuring. One older man says something about prophecy, another scoffs and mutters about superstition. You pretend to be asleep, but your ears stay open. Later, much later, the stable gets quiet again, just breathing, the occasional rustle of straw and the soft thud of hooves outside. You shift, and the chicken finally hops off your lap in search of something more productive to do. You think of how fragile everything feels, how crowded this little town is, and yet how lonely some people seem, how this one night, just like hundreds before it, is full of moments no one thinks will matter. But the thing about boring history for sleep is that sometimes the quietest places hold the loudest echoes. Sometimes the world changes not in the palaces or the courts, but in the back corners of overcrowded inns and stables that smell like hay and sweat. You curl tighter, wrap your blanket around your shoulders, and let your thoughts drift. Somewhere out there, the empire spins. Somewhere out there, coins are counted, scrolls are signed, wars are planned. But here, in the stillness between bleats and breaths, something else is happening, and you almost miss it, almost. Herod's paranoia and the whisper networks. By morning, the air feels different. Still dry, still heavy with dust, but now there's something brittle about it, like the town is holding its breath. You wake to the soft sound of sweeping. A boy outside the stable is pushing dust from one spot to another, probably because someone told him to keep busy. You stretch your legs, your back cracking like old parchment, and the donkey beside you gives you a slow blink like he's seen worse. You wander into the square again. The crowds are thinner today. The census scribes are still shouting, still scribbling, still acting like the empire will collapse if one more goat goes unregistered. But people's voices are lower. Eyes flick around more cautiously. You ask a bread seller what's going on, and she just raises an eyebrow. "Don't you listen," she says. "They say Herod had another dream." She spits on the ground. Or maybe someone else did, and he didn't like what it said. King Herod, the kind of ruler who makes even Rome a little nervous. You never see him, of course. He lives up north behind gates and guards and imported marble, but his shadow stretches far. His paranoia is a character in every story. People say he hears whispers before they're spoken, that he dreams of betrayal and wakes up with names on his lips, that he once executed his own son because someone sneezed during a dinner toast. You find a shady spot near the well, hoping to overhear something useful. An old woman is trading salt for fabric and muttering about soldiers arriving at night. "Not ours," she says. "New ones, with sharper swords and softer shoes." You sip from your water skin and pretend not to listen. Another man joins in, voice low. "I heard he summoned the priests again, wants to know if there's truth to the scrolls. The ones about a child, a star, a king." He glances up. He doesn't like competition. History books don't always tell you how loud fear can be when it's whispered. In Bethlehem, the rumors feel heavier than the taxes. People carry them like sacks of grain, heavy and leaking. You hear things you're not supposed to, about secret meetings, bribes to Roman captains, scrolls disappearing from temple shelves. And then there's the silence. You pass a doorway and see a family sitting still. No fire lit, no bread baking, just sitting, listening, waiting. You slip into a tavern, not for food, but for the noise. You need something to push back against the creeping tension. Inside, the air is thick with stew and politics. Men are arguing over Herod's latest decree, whatever it is this time. One says it's about new temple taxes. Another insists it's about a crackdown on foreign magi. A third, older than dust and probably just as wise, leans in and says, "It's about fear. His, ours. Doesn't matter. Fear is the only real law left." He takes a sip of watered wine and gestures toward the window. The sky tells stories, and Herod doesn't like stories he didn't write. You step back outside, blinking in the sun. The brightness feels harsh now. Too honest. You find a narrow street and walk without purpose, letting your feet decide the direction. You pass shuttered shops, quiet courtyards, and a group of children playing something like tag, but with rules that change every 5 seconds. You catch snippets of conversations, some in Greek, others in Aramaic, and one in a dialect you can't place. Everyone's talking, but no one's saying anything directly. This is the Whisper Network, the true lifeblood of the empire. News, warnings, and prophecies, all passed one sentence at a time, like smuggled goods. You sit near a bakery where a woman is kneading dough with the fury of a soldier sharpening a blade. "They came again last night," she says to no one in particular, asking about births, boys, ones born near the solstice. She slaps the dough. "They always come asking." And there it is, the fear behind the census, the paranoia behind the swords. Herod, somewhere far away, is hearing things about a child, a king not approved by Rome, a threat in a cradle. You lean back against the wall, eyes drifting up to the sky. That star is still there, brighter now, like it's not just shining but pointing. And you wonder, not for the first time, how something so small, a baby, a rumor, a flicker of light, can rattle palaces and topple kings. This is boring history for sleep. The kind with dust in your shoes and secrets in the shadows. The kind where empires quake not from earthquakes, but from whispers passed at wells. You stand, brush off the stone dust, and walk on, blending back into a town that looks quiet, but isn't. Egypt's magic and migrants. You're walking again, this time south. The road out of Bethlehem bends along dry ridges and wide valleys, where olive trees cling to rocky soil like they know something you don't. You're not exactly sure where you're going. You just know the town got too crowded, too loud with whispering, and people are moving. Families packing up in the dark, carts creaking before sunrise, children held tighter than usual. You pass a man on the road muttering about a warning he saw in a dream. "Head south," he says, his eyes wide and glassy. "Egypt will take you in." You don't argue. Dreams are as good a reason to move as any. Egypt. The word tastes like copper and honey. To most people around here, it's the land of old magic, forgotten gods, and scrolls that hum when you touch them. Rome rules it now, technically. But everyone knows Egypt answers to different powers, older ones. Powers that wear gold masks and know how to read the stars, like their instructions. As you follow the dusty trade path, the desert begins to change. The hills flatten, the wind shifts. The air gets warmer in a way that doesn't feel entirely natural, like the sun is listening. You pass camels burdened with goods wrapped in linen and rumors. You pass women with sharp eyes and sharper jewelry. And you start hearing stories. A boy with a hawk feather in his hair tells you about a temple where the statues cry blood on the solstice. A merchant whispers about crocodile priests who live on islands and keep secrets written on fish skin. One older man, missing 2 teeth and most of his mind, claims he saw a child glow under the moonlight near Memphis. "Glowed like a lantern," he says. "Didn't cry once." You don't believe all of it, but some part of you wants to. You stop at a roadside camp where travelers swap bread, warnings, and the latest oddities. One woman, nursing a baby with eyes too large for his face, says quietly, "There are new refugees. Not from war, from something else." She doesn't elaborate. No one asks her to. Egypt, it turns out, isn't just a refuge. It's a magnet for the strange, a soft net that catches anyone fleeing something unnameable. You spend a night in a way station carved from stone, sharing space with traders hauling purple dye and baskets of papyrus. A scholar from Alexandria offers to read your future in the ash of the campfire, then promptly falls asleep mid-sentence. The next morning he insists he still saw something and hands you a stick of incense for luck or clarity, whichever comes first. The city of Pelusium welcomes you like an exhausted cousin, worn down, half-built, and completely uninterested in your business. You walk through alleys that smell of spices you can't name, past temples with walls covered in carvings that shimmer in the heat. Here, even the air seems old, tired, like it's been breathing stories for too long and is ready for something new. You hear of a family staying in a back room of a tanner's shop. Not local, foreign. The mother's hands are calloused, the father speaks little, and the child doesn't cry. Doesn't blink much either, the tanner says, raising an eyebrow. Like he's listening to things the rest of us can't hear. You don't visit them, but you think about it. Instead, you drift toward the Nile, watch the river roll like molten glass beneath the sky, and wonder how many others have stood in this exact spot, thinking the world might be different soon. And it might. You overhear things. Rome is nervous, Herod is furious, Alexandria's temples are closing their gates to strangers, scrolls are being hidden, or burned, or both. The city holds its breath, same as Bethlehem did. You lie down under a date palm near the edge of a field and stare up through its fronds, listening to the rustle and hum of insects. A lizard scampers across your sandal. A camel groans in the distance. And above it all, that strange, bright star still watches. This is boring history for sleep, the kind where you walk until your feet ache, listen until your mind hums, and still understand almost nothing of what's really happening. Because when history turns, it doesn't shout, it whispers. Through dreams, stars, travelers, and the tiniest of children tucked away in forgotten rooms. You curl into your blanket. It smells like straw, smoke, and sweat. Familiar by now, Egypt holds you like a dream that doesn't want to end. The ordinary days of extraordinary people. You wake to the sound of wood being shaved, a gentle rhythmic scrape. You sit up slowly, joints stiff, and see him, just a boy, no older than 10, crouched beside a low workbench outside a narrow house. His hands are steady and his face is calm, not distracted, not bored, just present. You don't say anything at first, you just watch. He shapes a piece of olive wood with surprising precision. Not for play, not to pass the time, but with intention. Every cut matters. Every sliver falls like it knows where to land. His father is nearby, hammering something into place. The tap-tap-tap of wood-meeting iron fills the dusty air, joined occasionally by the bark of a dog, the flap of laundry in the breeze, and the distant call of a vendor selling honeyed nuts. You found your way back north again, back into the hills, away from the glow of Egypt's temples, and back toward the quieter edges of Judea. Life here is slower. It has to be. The land doesn't hurry, and neither do the people. They get up with the sun and sleep when it sets, work when it's dry, rest when they can. The boy finishes shaping the wood and holds it up to the light, inspecting it like he already knows what it's supposed to be. He sees you watching and gives the smallest nod. No smile, no words, just acknowledgement, as if to say, "Yes, I know you're there, and it's fine." He returns to his work. You sit in the shade of a fig tree and watch the rest of the day unfold. A woman sweeps her doorstep in deliberate strokes. A group of children chase a wheel down the street, their laughter bouncing off the walls. A man lifts a jug of water and drinks so slowly it feels ceremonial. It's just an ordinary day, which is perhaps the most extraordinary thing about it. Because while Herod rages in his palace and scrolls burn in Alexandria, here someone repairs a door, someone stirs lentils, someone gathers herbs before sunset, and a boy carves wood. This isn't history in the way we usually tell it. There are no battles here, no coronations, no speeches etched in stone. Just quiet, repetitive acts of living, the kind of moments that get forgotten until they aren't. You think about that star again, still hanging in the sky even now, barely noticeable in the late afternoon, but still there if you squint. Maybe it's not a spotlight. Maybe it's a reminder. You get up and walk slowly through the village. People nod at you, offer a fig, wave without asking your name. No one demands anything. No one tries to sell you a vision of greatness. They're busy with their own lives, their own bread to bake and water to draw. At the edge of town, you pass a woman humming a lullaby to a baby, swaddled tight against her chest. The tune is familiar. You've heard it before. Maybe back in the stable. Or maybe in Egypt. Or maybe it's just one of those melodies the world keeps passing along, mother to child, without ever needing to write it down. You sit by the well again, feet dangling in the shade, and feel the day stretch like a long, soft yawn. This is boring history for sleep. Not the part with fireworks or headlines. The part with soft footsteps, quiet labor, and people who don't know they're being watched by time. You think of the boy again. The way his hands moved, the way his eyes didn't rush, and for a flicker of a second, you wonder what he'll become. But only for a second, because that's not for you to know. Not tonight. Tonight is for sleep. All right, you've made it. The day has folded itself into evening now, and the sky is cooling, softening. The breeze has lost its heat and carries just a hint of crushed herbs and distant smoke. Somewhere, a door creaks shut. A clay lamp flickers behind a curtain, and the village begins its slow, gentle exhale. You're still sitting by the well, but your thoughts have drifted far, not into the palaces or scrolls or stars this time, just into the stillness of it all, the smallness of every moment, the way time slips past, unnoticed, when no one is trying to capture it. The boy with the carving tools, the mother with her lullaby, the tired travelers trying to find a little rest in a world that rarely stops spinning. None of them are trying to change history. They're just living. And somehow that's what shapes everything. You lie back in the dust, arms behind your head, and close your eyes. The ground is uneven but familiar. The air hums gently, full of night insects and sleepy birds, finding their last perch. Somewhere, a baby stirs, then quiets again. Even the stars seem to blink slower now. This isn't a story of answers. It's a story of drift, of weightless wandering through a moment that no one recognized as sacred until it was already long gone. You let the silence stretch. There's nothing to figure out now, nothing left to follow. Just the soft press of memory against your shoulder, the warm breath of a donkey settling down nearby, and the quiet certainty that sometimes the world's most important days feel exactly like this. Uneventful, unremarkable, and perfect. Sleep well, traveler. End of script. Sweet dreams.